Topics covered in this session is about human resource system, steps in developing HR system, and components of HR systems. These are a part of the syllabus of Strategic Human Resource Management, Unit 3. The title of the unit is SHRM Framework. So let's understand what is an HR system. Every organization establishes a human resource system in order to manage all the activities relating to employees. So hence it is also referred as employee record system. Whereas some organizations may have an HR system which includes more than one segment, like how to track a candidate, job evaluation system, a job assessment system, employee benefit system. So they might have more than one track, or there is a possibility they can embed everything into one and call it as a system. So now let's discuss about what are the steps involved in developing an HR system for an organization. Basically, there are 6 steps involved, which every organization need to format according to their needs and requirements. The steps might vary from one organization to other, but these are the standard steps. There are basically 8 steps. The first step is about determining the need. The second step is identifying the HR network to meet the needs. Third, determining the major players in the system and their needs for access to the system. Fourth step is selecting an HR consultant. So similarly, there are 8 steps we will be discussing subsequently in this session. To begin with, the first step to set up or establish an human resource system is to determine the need. The need for the system can be accomplished through several ways. One of the simple way is to understand the problem with this approach is that some system may simply be reactive ones to fill the immediate requirements. So the first sub point which we need to understand is assess the current HR processes. That is how the company is presently managing its human resource workflows. And then identify what are the inefficiencies and which are the areas which require improvement before a system is developed. The next is aligning with strategic goals. In order to ensure that the HR system which you are developing supports the entire organization and to achieve the broader objectives of a business and to plan strategically, effective results will be obtained. Next, the most important when you're determining the need is the input should be taken from the various stakeholders. And definitely the stakeholder here is your employees who are both temporary, permanent, and who can be also employees taken on part-time or need-based employees. So therefore gather all the information from these stakeholders and what is the industry trend. So this is the first step in developing an HR system is determining the need. Move on to the next step is identifying the HR network. Here you will have the flow chart. You need to do mapping, design a network, and then have a data sharing and integration procedure. And in order to avoid any kind of patchwork, ensure that HR network system remains cost effective. So let's break down each. The first is using a flowchart in order to illustrate the interconnections between the various modules, such as staffing and compensation. Design a network to meet short term needs while allowing future scalability and growth. So, whenever there is a need in the future, the present system should be designed in such a way where it can be scaled up. Next, facilitate data sharing across various departments, modules to reduce repetition or redundancy. And this will help us to improve the overall efficiency. Ensure that HR network remains cohesive and cost effective because later if you want to make any changes, it becomes expensive. So this is the second step, identify how the HR network works. The third step is determine major players and access needs. Identifying the major players is very essential because individuals and departments interacting with HR system for an access and control is very essential. Determine specific access needs to ensure appropriate permissions and secure the data and its usability. The next aspect is to develop a matrix. So mapping helps us to use the system components for effective access planning. Next is customize the roles. to allow efficient task performance without compromising on data safety and integrity. So this is very technical. You have to determine the major players and accessibility because data privacy should be considered. The next step is we want to understand is relating to the third step, determining the major players in the system. We are done just now. Next is select an HR consultant. Here HR consultant, why we have to select this to assist in the designing of software and hardware system because it is more of a technical aspect. So expertise in system design. HR consultants can bring specialized knowledge, domain knowledge in designing a software as per the company's need and requirement and hardware components for an HR system so that it ensures an effective architecture. So, by doing this, consultants help us to improve the overall quality and functionality by implementing overall the best practices matching to the organizational needs. HR consultants assist in gathering requirements. They also help in selecting the right vendors to place the orders for both software component and hardware component. So this becomes very essential because you're going to consider the cost also involved. The next step, the fifth step is identify the software which is required. Here we talk about prepare requests for proposals. RFPs means request for proposals. So you have to solicit the various bids from qualified vendors by clearly defining the scope of work and what are your technical needs. So for contractor, you have a different RFPs, and for in-house systems, you have to obtain bids for hardware and software application and in-house system models. Hence, the entire process should involve transparency. A clear request for proposal allows us to compare various proposals based on cost, functionality, and the reputation of vendors. In spite of even taking the HR consultant's help, there might be chances where they have their commissions involved. So, to avoid all this, it has to be transparent. So, you can compare and choose the best who will help you with both the software component and hardware component. Next, we move on to consider the confidentiality requirements. Confidentiality is essential in HR system to protect employee information, which is highly sensitive, so that unauthorized access and breaches are avoided. So here you need to establish a clear data privacy policies in order to have control, regulate, and use employee information in the best manner without indulgence of any hackers from the external environment. Next, we need to ensure that we comply with legal and regulatory standards, which will help us to minimize all the liabilities relating to employee management and it ensures employee trust. So, by doing this, you'll be able to build a secure human resource system addressing both our confidentiality early in the development stage itself so that the data is safe and we are maintaining data integrity. The next is we move on to the components of HR system. So let me just sum up with all the steps involved in developing an HR system. First is determination of the need. Next is identifying the HR network. Third step is who are the major players in the system. Fourth step is take a help of an HR consultant. The fifth step is identify the software which you're going to develop by generating an RFPs and identify the software hardware component. Consider the confidentiality requirements. So we now move on to the next topic is components of HR system. There are systems and the components may vary from one organization to another, but HR system includes two or more modules. Hence, it's purely dependent on the size of the organization and the nature of business. So we are going to discuss the standard components. It basically comprises of four. The first component is staffing system. The second component, reward and compensation system. Third component, employee and career development system. And the fourth component is performance management system. Let's understand each component. The first is staffing system. It is necessary for an organization to have automation of recruitment. So you automate the job postings, application tracking, and even interview scheduling to streamline the entire hiring process. This will reduce your time and cost. Hiring decisions are enhanced through data analytics, aligned with organizational goals and workforce needs. So that becomes a data driven hiring. Next, staffing system should adhere to the employment laws. So we have to match to the legal compliance. So hence we have to follow all the rules and regulation throughout our recruitment and onboarding procedures. So integration with other HR modules enables a seamless transition from recruitment to employee management. So this is how a staffing system has to be established, considering the automation, data-driven approach, legal compliance, and overall integration. The next component is employee and career development system. It is necessary to focus on improving employee skills and competencies. So how is this possible? Through training programs and workshops. It is necessary that wherever possible use mentorship as an opportunity. Provide performance feedbacks which will help an employee to get guidance, and it will also help them to focus on career growth. The most important is employees should have a clarity in their career paths, and the organization should be prepared for succession planning. So it will help us to retain the best talent, and it will help us to create a good leadership development is possible for the future successes. And most important is aligning individual goals with organizational objectives, and we have to integrate the overall development with performance management and compensation. So it is necessary to have this component with topmost priority, because the employee will retain only if you are giving them the wide visibility of opportunities and focusing on their career development. The next component is reward and compensation system. It is very essential to manage employee remuneration, not only salary, but also bonus components, commission, benefits, in order to ensure that fair and competitive environment is established when it comes to employee compensation. By doing this, you will be able to attract the best talent in the industry. The compensation packages helps organizations to retain the most skilled employees, and it will be a motivating factor for the entry level employees. So it is necessary to establish a linkage between compensation and performance metrics, so which will enable an organization to have a merit-based rewards which will motivate everyone towards the better productivity. And it is also essential that we match with the legal standards and adapting to the changing marketing conditions, which will ensure an overall sustainable development and management of the human resource. The last component is performance management system. Regular assessment and feedback will help employees to improve their performance, and it will recognize and create a mechanism which will make them to achieve effectively as well as efficiently. So it is necessary to align, a system should align or match with the organizational goals. So where you bridge the gap between the individual goals and the organizational objectives, this can be done through supporting strategic planning and growth. Transparent communication, which will foster a culture of both accountability and responsibility within the teams as well as at the larger perspective of an organization. Linking performance outcomes with career development and compensation motivates employees and derives towards the path of success. Hence, in this session, the first session of the module 3, we have discussed the introduction to human resource system, the steps, totally 8 steps involved in developing an human resource system, and we have discussed the 4 components in an human resource system.